Hi, everyone. My name is Scott Silverman. I am one of the co-founders of Commerce Next. We are a community event series and conference for marketers at retail and D2C brands. And on behalf of my fellow co-founders, Veronica Sonsev and Alan Dick, I'd like to welcome you to our weekly webinar. The topic for today is Checkout UX, and we're going to be looking at overall Checkout UX and how to think about checkout UX during this very unique holiday season when there will be a shipageddon, shipping challenges that are expected as more people are opting for things like curbside pickup and buy online, pickup in the store, and just general shipping challenges. We like to make these, we do this live and we like to make these interactive. So we'll be taking your questions. Feel free to go ahead and add them, and I'll be showing you how to do that in a moment. But thank you all so much for tuning in and joining us today. I want to start with a couple of thank yous. First, I want to thank today's speakers. Today you'll be hearing from Woo Kim, Senior Director, E-commerce and Digital at Greats, Rashawn Anderson, who is VP Omnichannel Marketing at Universal Studios Hollywood, and Jason Cham, UX designer at Locate. So we recognize how busy everybody is. We really appreciate, especially this time of year, that you're joining us. And we have a special gift for our speakers that is going to be made available to you through Loop Commerce. And so if you're listening and you're also interested in a gift, we will be randomly selecting 5 lucky live attendees to receive a gift. So sorry, replay listeners, you need to be listening live for that. Want to move on to the agenda for today. Pretty straightforward. I'm going to tell you about a couple upcoming events for Commerce Next. Let you know a little bit about how the webinar platform works. Jason Cham is going to be giving us a presentation on Checkout UX. As always, we are interested in hearing what you're thinking about this topic, so we have some audience poll questions, and then we'll get into a conversation, Q&A, with our panelists. So coming up next week is Understanding Shopper Psychology as we get ready for Black Friday. We have an amazing lineup. Lucy Basson from Content Square, Jason McNary at Uno de 50, Shawan Johnson at Tommy Hilfiger, Darren Hall at Vera Bradley, and our own Veronica Sonsev from Commerce Next will be moderating that. We recently upgraded our website and reorganized the information to make it much easier for everybody to find what you're looking for and all the different things that are going on at Commerce Next. So just go to commercenext.com. You can see upcoming webinars. You can look at past webinars and replays. You can see our research, like our research we did on the shipping crisis, and a lot more. So that's a great way to stay in touch with what we have going on. So housekeeping notes, we're recording this, so don't worry if you missed anything. We'll make it available, the recording, tomorrow. And I want to show you a few things on your screen. So the majority are in your upper right in this webinar console. You'll see things like Q&A, polls, handouts. If you want to ask a question, you go to the Q&A, click on that, and then look below. You can ask a question. Whenever questions are submitted, the entire audience has the opportunity to upvote them, and that helps us see the questions that you most want to have answered. We have a couple of handouts, one, Jason's presentation, and also there is another handout on specifically on UX checkout. So if you go to the handouts, you can see that on your right side as well. And if you're listening on the replay, look on the bottom, kind of on the right side, and you'll see the link to get handouts there. So we will be asking some questions, as I mentioned. When we do that, you'll see that there are polls. And the polls they'll either be open and we'll be tallying the votes, or they'll be closed. You can look at past polls and see what how people answered. And again, if you want to see the results of those during the replay, just look on your bottom right there. So with that, I would like to ask Jason Cham to go ahead, turn his camera on. I'm going to turn mine off. He's going to walk us through his thoughts on checkout. And then I will be back with Jason and the other panelists, and we'll have a panel discussion and get into some more content. Welcome, Jason. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for the introduction, Scott, and thanks for having me here. Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. As Scott mentioned, my name is Jason Cham, and I am the user experience designer as part of the product team at Locate GBG. I actually did a degree in industrial design technology, which is more physical products, but since then I've really fallen in love with UX. And it's been my passion to solve problems and create great experiences which are ethical, easy to use, accessible, and enjoyable for the user. A great phrase I've always liked is good design is invisible. When something is well designed, you don't really notice there and how easy it is to use. So that's been my goal. Enough about me. I'm here to hopefully give you some high-level UX recommendations on how to improve your site in preparation for the holiday season. Is your checkout ready? So let's try and make shopping with your brand a joy for the 2020 holiday season and beyond. Today, we're going to go over some best practices to minimize friction in your checkout process, and how to implement small changes that have a big impact on your conversion rates, tips to optimize online checkout on any device, and also steps to reduce failed delivery rates with clean, verified customer data. So let's begin with a few holiday fast facts. By now we know that this holiday season is going to be reimagined with convenience and efficiency at the forefront. At Locate, we actually did a survey of 1,200 US consumers to understand how they're planning to celebrate this year, and 68% of those expect the pandemic to really impact how they do celebrate. The next stat comes as no surprise. We know that digital has really taken over. According to our survey, 73% of shoppers are planning to shop for gifts, mostly online this year. This is why it's so important to get your checkout right ahead of the holiday. And finally, 92% of consumers demand a fast, frictionless checkout experience. That being said, let's move on to best practices and strategies you can implement to improve your UX in your checkout. So let's start off with the different types of e-commerce shoppers, first of all. Let's get to know our users. There are 5 different types of e-commerce shopper. Each one is unique. Some visit with a specific product in mind, others are deciding what to purchase, and some literally just visit just to kill some time. Every element of an e-commerce site is important for the site's success, from product images to descriptions to registration to checkout, which is what we're going to focus on today. Different types of shoppers rely on different elements of your site. So understanding these user types will really help your design teams to know to be able to build a usable and useful experience for all shoppers. So the first type we have are product-focused shoppers. They know exactly what they want. They usually need a replacement for something they already have. They have done all the previous research. They've picked the item they want. Their main aim is to locate the product on your site, check it's the right one, and then buy it. So their goal is speed. Key elements for them in the checkout are easy access to previously purchased items for simple reorder, and also a streamlined checkout process to get shoppers in and out as quickly as possible. Next, we have browsers. These are the leisurely shoppers who go to their favorite sites or new sites for inspiration or to kill a bit of time. They actively choose to spend time on your site with your company or with your brand, mainly to see what has changed, such as the latest trends, the latest deals, and see what other people are buying. Moving on, we have researchers. They're quite similar to product-focused shoppers. They have a goal in mind. They plan to purchase, but that purchase may happen today, tomorrow, next week, or in 6 months. They're mainly there to collect information about products and prices. They are looking for good trust signals on your site to know that it's knowledgeable and a trustworthy source. So a really good key checkout element for them is an easy-to-edit shopping cart that retains products between visits. Next, we have bargain hunters, who are pretty much there just to look for the best deals possible. They need to be able to locate deals, know how much they are saving. These shoppers will repeatedly jump through hoops to qualify for those deals, and they're on a mission to save. So a key element for them is to allow easy coupon redemption and also a checkout which applies discounts automatically when criteria are met. And finally, we come to the one-time shoppers. One-time shoppers may be product-focused, they may be there to browse, They may be bargain hunting or researching. They are often gift card recipients, gift card buyers or gift buyers. They may come in with a goal in mind, such as a list of products the gift recipient is interested in. They usually have no intentions to visit the site after the initial purchase and are visiting for this one-time need only. They are usually not familiar with the site they're visiting, or in many cases, even the products that are on sale. Most importantly, they really appreciate sites that don't make them have to create an account. So a key element for them is to have a checkout without registration. So the checkout is a huge part of the customer experience and can often be the deciding factor as to whether a visitor makes a purchase or not. For an online shopper, filling in their shipping and billing address can be one of the most dreaded parts of the process, even more so if they have to fill in the address of a friend or a family that they might not be familiar with. But you as a retailer can really turn this pain point into a selling point for your site. Some of the checkout changes that I'll be talking about today will include implementing a guest checkout, reducing form fields, simplifying your checkout steps to show progression, and also finally enhancing and prioritizing your mobile site. So the guest checkout. There's a story of a major e-commerce site back in the day who had a very basic form on their checkout process. It was essentially just an email address and a password. The site would force customers to register before they could pay for their items in the basket. The designers of the site thought this was a good idea to enable repeat customers to really purchase faster. And surely it can't be that much of an inconvenience for first-time customers just to stick in some details, right? However, an external user experience team carried out some research and discovered a lot of customers who were first-time shoppers did actually mind registering, and they were actually resenting it. Hence, they would have a drop-off, and they wouldn't even purchase. One customer even said, "I'm not here to be in a relationship. I just want to buy something." It's also a problem for returning customers who may forget their login credentials and also and have to create a new account or go through the long-winded process of forget password. So on the recommendation of the UX experts, they implemented a simple fix which removed the register button in favor of a continue button, which stated that they did not have to fill in their details and create an account to make a purchase. And the continue would take them directly to the checkout. That e-commerce site saw the number of customers purchasing go up by 45%. And the extra purchases resulted in an extra $15 million in the first month. And in the first year, the site saw an additional $300 million in revenue. That was aptly named the $300 million button. So obviously, I'm not saying that that implementing a guest checkout will make your site $300 million. However, these numbers prove that you can make a really drastic difference by doing that. So tips are to reduce the friction for new customers if it's their first time interacting and buying with you. Provide an easy guest checkout option, which is prominent and above the fold on the page, and don't force registration up front. Offer it afterwards and maybe even by email. So moving on, we've got reduced form fields. So the average cart abandonment rate is 75% according to eMarketer. When asked why they abandoned, shoppers usually said the process was too long or complicated, or there were too many fields, which would increase the probability by 26%. The average checkout has over 14 form fields, which is twice as many form fields as needed. Address capture usually takes up the majority of these fields. Good tip is not to show internal processes through your checkout UI. So it's advisable to make use of a good address capture, which is where locate comes in to reduce your number of form fields. Moving on to slide 11, it's also advisable to reduce the number of steps in your checkout process. Similar to what a customer said in the user research before about the fact they don't want a relationship, they just want the product. A customer also doesn't want the process of getting a product. Lots of steps can make a checkout really heavy, time-consuming, and a bit of a chore. So the best thing to do is reduce the number of steps. Usually the selling of physical products includes the following steps: a shopping cart, a billing information step, a shipping information step, choosing the shipping method, choosing the payment method, and then a confirmation page. Having the billing and shipping information separate to the shipping method just allows you to use the information they input to calculate things like shipping cost and delivery times ready for them when they get to that step. For digital products, it's very similar, but there's even less steps. So there's only really a shipping cart, billing information, payment method, and a confirmation. If you want your customers to stay the course and reach the golden confirmation thank you page, it's a good idea to show them a clear path to the finish line. If they know from the outset how much will be required to complete the purchase, you can show progression, and it will make checking out a lot less daunting for them. So progress bars are a great way to give the customer a view of how far is left to go. So it's a bit like gamification. It gives the users a sense of completion as well. So two great examples we've got here are Reese and the Dollar Shave Club, both clearly showing out the checkout journey. So one of Locate's clients, Ralph Lauren, have paired our simple single line address validation with inline validation, as you can see with the green ticks. And this is to indicate that the address field is complete and verified. This gives shoppers confidence that they have entered the information correctly. And it also gives them a sense of progression through the form. So let's face it, mobile is really taken over. Of the consumers we surveyed, 54% of US consumers plan to holiday shop on their mobile devices. So this recommendation is to enhance and prioritize your mobile site for your e-commerce site. Mobile shoppers are inherently impatient creatures, with 50% expecting their mobile experience to be easier than it is on a desktop. So it's important that the site is accessible with clear, readable form labels and texts. Another thing that's important with form fields and elements is that they bring up the relevant keyboard for the input. So, for example, a telephone number field will bring up a number pad instead of a QWERTY keyboard. And bearing these small things in mind will just make that user experience much more enjoyable for the user. So during last week's webinar, Ecommerce Next polled the audience and asked, is your mobile checkout a single page? 67% of retailers said no. This is something to take a look at optimizing. With a huge spike in mobile shopping, there's no better solution than a one-page checkout, mainly because it's faster, more convenient, it reduces the cart abandonment rate, and studies have shown that shoppers believe it's easier. Finally, minimize the need to input text. Address lookup reduces the number of keyboard strokes dramatically. Entering address information can be really tedious. People make mistakes typing in general, and even more so on a mobile device. When we tested type ahead address technology on a mobile device with shoppers, one user said, I like that it populates my address so quickly, saving me time, but also verifying that I didn't make a mistake on my phone. So have you ever thought about how checkout improvements could reduce failed delivery rates? When most of you think about shipping issues, you probably connect those challenges to USPS, UPS, and FedEx being over capacity. While that may be true, many failed deliveries are actually connected to the incorrect address being entered during checkout. Your checkout actually has a lot to do with improving your delivery success rates. As the e-commerce business has grown, USPS has added over 1.2 million new residential delivery points in the last year alone, and that's a lot of new addresses. 1 out of 20 online orders never reach their destination. If businesses fail to capture accurate address data in the checkout, the chance of the item reaching the correct recipient is greatly reduced, and this leads to a very frustrating customer experience. 57% of consumers say they would avoid using a retailer again if they had a negative delivery experience. During the holidays, many shoppers are going to be inputting unfamiliar addresses for gifts for their friends and family. So verifying the data is key, and address verification is a way retailers can really improve these operational efficiencies for good. Lastly, in these changing times, consider leveraging a checkout to support curbside or locker pickup communications with shoppers. It can make a big difference to create a smooth customer experience. So those incorrect shipments not only negatively affect the customer experience, 69% of customers are unlikely to shop with a retailer again if an item is more than 2 days late. But they also create a loss in revenue when retailers need to pick up the tab for lost packages and additional delivery costs. The average cost associated with undeliverable packages is $20 billion. This can be corrected if the address is verified at the point of entry in the checkout process. Before I finish, I just want to give you a quick overview on Locate and how we help our retail clients. We have over 19,000 customers worldwide and work with top retailers like Nordstrom, Sephora, Kohl's, and Michaels, to name a few. Our address verification solutions are proven to help minimize checkout friction by reducing the amount of typing required as much as 78%. Our easy to use, easy to integrate location-based services will ensure you maintain best quality customer data, increase online conversion rates, reduce failed deliveries, and of course, improve the user experience. In fact, in our recent survey again, 40% of shoppers said they trust retailers more if they have address verification versus those retailers without. As a result, 23% of shoppers would make additional purchases in the future from that retailer, and 20% would register for an account. Finally, some key takeaways for you. Be prepared for an earlier surge in online shopping and start testing on your site and test again. Minimize friction in your checkout process, and this will improve your conversions, the user experience, and the delivery success rates. Utilize clear, readable form fields and texts. Optimize your mobile site by reducing form fields. And finally, look at your data. What are your customers having problems with? And could you rework or rewrite that stage? And finally, I think it's pretty crucial to carry out user research on your customers to find out what they really want and adapt to their changes in behavior and needs. So yeah, thanks for joining me today. I'm Jason Cham, User Experience Designer at Locate GBG. Please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn for any specific questions, or head to locate.com for more resources and information on how we can help. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jason. Lots of great information and advice there on such an important area for e-commerce. And just want to remind everyone, specifically on mobile checkout, you'll see there is a white paper in the handouts that's all about mobile checkout. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about that during the Q&A. There's some questions that are coming in from our listeners, which is awesome. We always appreciate that. And we will weave those into the panel discussion, which we'll get to in a moment. So I wanted to get started and hear what everyone who's listening in has on their mind related to this topic. So let me launch the first poll. This is around shopping cart abandonment. And the question is, since the pandemic, how has your shopping cart abandonment changed from much higher to much lower or something in between? And it seems like generally cart abandonment rates are higher than they were pre-pandemic. So presumably either people are having trouble with checkout or they're doing a lot more browsing and leaving things in carts and not necessarily finishing those shopping visits. Next question we want to get to, and this is around mobile checkout. So how would you grade your mobile checkout? A, excellent, or the worst is fail, and are you somewhere in between there? So how are you all feeling about your mobile checkout and how it seems to be performing for you? Around 60% feel they're average, and a little more than a quarter feel like they're below average. So let me close this poll. It's good to hear how everyone is thinking about checkout who's listening in. So our next question is around this idea of shipping challenges and using checkout as a way to, communicate with your shoppers. Last chance to set their expectations about this. So let me start the polling, and it's a very simple yes or no question is, are you adding any kind of communications to checkout to, and I probably should have worded this a little bit different, but set shipping expectations with your customers. Are you using that advantage? And I would think if you're not, it's probably not too late to go ahead and do that. But it seems like the majority of the people are, almost more than 80% have done that. So I'm going to close that poll. And our last question is a way to kind of get you thinking about our next webinar next week on the 28th. And this is really, we're going to be talking about shopper psychology. So how do you think your shoppers will feel going into Black Friday? And this, you can select all that apply. Are they going to be excited for the holidays ahead? Are they going to be tired from pandemic and the elections? Are they worried about their future? Are they hopeful about what's ahead? And again, you can select more than one here. What we saw is that majority of people, you feel like your customers are tired from the pandemic and the elections. That seems about right. So let's move into our panel, and I'm going to widen our screens here a little bit. And Wu, you're with us on the phone, right?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. I wanted to start with Rashawn and Wu. If you could, oh, my camera's off. I'm going to turn mine on. There we go. I know you all want to see, remind me that I need a haircut. Rashawn and Wu, if you could please introduce yourselves, talk a little bit about your approach to UX and checkout in the different, both in your current role and what you've learned in different roles at different companies throughout your career. And Rashawn, we'll start with you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Rashawn Anderson. I run omnichannel marketing for Universal Studios Hollywood, which is part of the Universal Parks and Resorts overall organization. We have theme parks around the world. And in terms of how we've approached UX, UI, and checkout at Universal, in addition to, I'll talk sort of about my more recent role. I came into this role from Forever 21, and the approaches in terms of the UX UI have been very different, dramatically different between these two companies. At Universal, we have a fairly disciplined approach. We have a global UX UI team that applies standards across all of the parks, and they do fantastic work. And their work is really ongoing in terms of standardizing some things, but also giving the individual parks some local flavor, if you will. And at Forever 21, the approach was very different. We didn't have a formal UX UI team. My design team there was actually team members mostly from print design. And so coming into the digital world was very different. And we really moved at breakneck speed. So fast fashion is not just fast in terms of the inventory. It's also fast in terms of the business decisions. And so, I think at Forever 21, we did an almost complete site redesign in 2 weeks. Whereas at Universal, the first site design that I led took 6 months. And so that's kind of the difference in speed, but also the difference in diligence. And we also have a lot more formalized feedback structure at Universal. I obviously think the current approach is the right one. You should really be taking a disciplined approach. You should be getting feedback and doing lots of usability testing. And fortunately, that's what we've been able to do at Universal.
Great. Wu, if you could please introduce yourself, and we unfortunately we don't have your video feed, but we still want to hear what you have to say. But let us know who you are, and a little bit about your point of view on UX and checkout that you've kind of experienced in different roles that you've been in e-commerce.
Yes. Hi, everyone. First and foremost, I'd like to note that I wish I was on video today. I unfortunately had to make it to a location shoot, and the Wi-Fi is rather weak in the area, but I'm very much excited to be here, so thank you. My name is Wu Kim, and I have an extensive e-commerce experience in corporate, D2C, and fashion companies. And my specialty really lies in crafting, a consumer-centric digital strategy, UX. And I strongly believe in the philosophy of translating our traditional brick and mortar retail experience that we're very much used to into the digital space. So things, some of the key things to do is really listen to your customers, the customers that are providing feedback and understanding, what are some of the friction that they're experiencing. The last thing you want to have is a customer come to your site from your paid efforts, and then they just bounce, and then that would be the end of the relationship. So gaining that feedback is truly a beneficial opportunity. And then, of course, QAing many, many times on any kind of releases that you're doing. So QAing on different platforms, desktop, phone, different browsers. And once you think you finish QAing, you should probably QA one more time.
All right. So I guess really focusing more, I mean, it's great to hear, some of your key kind of, beliefs and approaches to UX, but specific to checkout, what are, Jason, gave a great presentation on a lot of solid information and advice, but just from your own personal experience, what are some do's and don'ts, or, what's like, if you can help our audience understand, like, any mistake they should avoid, or things that you've done with checkout that really helped, that, maybe it was a surprise that it helped as much as it did. So, Rashaan, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Yeah, I would say, the biggest learning, I think, for me has been to not assume. Even the things that seem obvious in terms of what may or may not improve conversion may not hold true for your specific customer. And I'll give you for instance, the standard rule is less is more in checkout. We actually added a step to our checkout and saw a 20% conversion lift because it was much more clear messaging to the consumer. So, you have to be constantly testing these things. And I would say if you can test and you have the runway, we don't always, that is really the best way to approach any changes in checkout. It's such a sensitive area that you really need to have an understanding of how it ultimately impacts conversion. So as often as you can, test and just don't assume.
And Wu, anything you want to add to that? I mean, you talked a lot about the importance of testing and as well, but anything else, any surprises that you've encountered in checkout?
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is, we often in the industry talk about being very mobile driven, mobile first, but I think this is very much the case. And, for us, mobile takes about 65% of our total traffic, and that user experience and the journey has really changed from people purchasing and converting on desktop, and now people are much more comfortable with purchasing items through their phone. So one of the things that to keep in mind, especially with the checkout experience, so for Shopify, the default is to have the order summary collapsed, but that's actually the section where a user would enter their discount code or a gift card code. So we have code in the checkout .liquid of the back end of your theme, code that auto shows the section, so that way the code can be entered there easily. And that was feedback that we were receiving from frustrated customers, and our abandoned checkout for mobile actually decreased, which was really nice to see.
So speaking of mobile, I want to kind of turn back to you, Rashaan. I know you've worked on a mobile app for Universal, and that seems like that's a critical element to the overall brand experience, because it's delivering such important information to people that are, in the midst of, being at the park. And then right before we got on the phone, you were mentioning that it's been really useful for ordering food, especially during COVID, for more contactless types of transactions. So I'd be interested to hear. I mean, you like someone that has to really pressure test a mobile app experience, and hearing even about the checkout related to the food ordering. I'd love to hear a few things that you learned from that.
Yeah, I think the key, and I can't stress enough just getting information from all of your customer feedback vehicles. I think often in digital, we get focused around the feedback that we're directly seeing through our digital channels, but there is feedback coming through offline, through our call centers, from our guest relations team in the park. And then we, of course, have email submissions. We have feedback mechanisms directly in the app. And so we're constantly culling through that information and trying to glean new insights into customers and what they may need. And the key for us, so to be super clear, our park in Hollywood is still closed, but our Orlando park is open. And so that's really where the activity is happening now and where the app becomes critical because it does help us with social distancing measures with using the park map in the app versus a printed version, and mobile food ordering. We also have a feature called Virtual Line, where instead of people queuing up for lines, they just reserve a time so that they can come back and sort of immediately board the ride. And so all of those things, though we had them as features previously, the adoption has really ramped up, not only because consumers want these features, but because we're helping to message them in the park in order to promote our safety measures. So it's been really key sort of battle testing the mobile app to make sure it can handle the additional volume, rolling out mobile food ordering to more venues than we had previously, as well as Virtual Line. All of that stuff was a big effort internally, as well as educating our frontline team members so that they can help people as they're navigating the app. And so I think all of that has been really critical and important, and we've got a lot of good learnings for future development.
Wow, that's great. I mean, there seems to be a theme we're hearing so far, which is the importance of collecting customer feedback from multiple sources, constantly listening to customers. So I want to, we'll kind of, I have some more questions, but I want to get to some of them that are coming in from the listeners. So one from Chloe Serrato. And I think this is more directed towards you, Jason, wants to know what's the best approach for global sites in the checkout experience. They're already working with Locate for address validation, and it works great, but they found that some of the fields applicable to the US do not apply for their global sites for other countries. So, for example, state and zip codes. And do other e-commerce sites have separate flows depending on the country, or do the gray out fields not necessarily for those countries? And I know you mentioned in your presentation that the international addresses can be even trickier.
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to try and answer this to the best of my ability, but that is a brand by brand decision. We do have some clients that have international sites that are compatible with those specific country as addresses format fields. But in this instance, where you want to use one universal site, brands would customize that on their end. Then utilize our APIs for the data and verification. I'm happy to follow up with you after this with more specifics, Chloe, if that's helpful.
All right. Yep. We can get you in touch with Chloe. So want to switch into kind of like a broader question on UX. And it was interesting when we did the audience poll, and the consensus from everyone listening is that shopping cart abandonments during the pandemic have been higher, at least to some degree. That seems to be what we're hearing across the board. So I guess I want to start with you, Jason. What are some of the other, as a UX expert, kinds of shopping behaviors that patterns that you've really noticed that are affecting UX during the pandemic? I mean, so something like shopping cart abandonment rates. Should retailers be kind of fixated on decreasing those, or is that just a new pattern of shopping that they need to accept and find a way to understand what's going on with the customer?
Yeah, good question. So I think COVID has really driven a much broader scope of people who are having to use devices, software, and websites, which is like huge usability issues. In particular, we have like the elderly users who are having to use these now because maybe they didn't use these before. There's a stat which says there's like a 65% increase in online shopping by the over 50s. Unfortunately, the design these days aren't suitable for all people, especially the elderly above 70 or 80 who are having to isolate and cannot be in contact with anyone. Unfortunately, a lot of companies don't really care about the older generation. However, we really need to design better for senior citizens who can't rely on the old solution of really getting help from their children or grandchildren. I think user interfaces really need to be dramatically simplified for senior citizens to use them well, and I think that would be where digital retailers could really make a big impact at the moment as well.
And Rashaan and Wu, anything that you've been noticing? I don't want to spend too much time on this because I know we have other topics to cover, but just kind of curious if there's any key, behavioral trends that you've noticed during COVID.
Yeah, this one has actually passed, but for us, when we first went into lockdown here in California, we noticed a dramatic shift to desktop behavior, and we had been so mobile focused because, like many companies, around 2014, 2015 is when we sort of crossed the chasm with mobile, and so we became hyper focused on local. We didn't lose a focus on desktop, but we certainly had to shift back that way a little bit as more people were home and experiencing us on a laptop or a larger screen size. So that was a key learning for us. And I think that's one that we always have to be mindful of, is to test across devices. Wu mentioned this as well, across browsers. We just can't, even in a responsive environment, cover every possibility. And so we just need to be very diligent about testing.
Yeah. So, Wu, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that, which you can, but also when in the lead up to having you join us, we were chatting and you were mentioning some things that you've been thinking about on your checkout, that you feel like there's things that retailers need to be thinking about and even making adjustments to checkout that aren't part of the core mechanics of checkout, that most retailers would not want to touch during the holiday season, but thinking about alignment with your promotional cadence and so on. And I thought that would be really interesting for you to share a little bit about that, because I think it's something that's fairly actionable if people aren't thinking about this already.
Yeah, so kind of going back to what I was mentioning earlier in terms of the philosophy of really converting the brick and mortar experience to the digital space. So the consistent messaging and the communication of your promotions or campaigns that you're running is really important. So making sure you're having that on the PDP, you are having that on the PLPs, and then of course at checkout, it's not a moment, that has been lost. You can absolutely continue the communication. So for example, let's say you're running a tiered discount on the site, and you can communicate to the customer saying, if you were to spend X more dollars, then you can unlock the next discount. So having that consistent messaging where you're not just having a large hero banner on your homepage saying that you're running a promotion, but making sure that you're following that messaging through the entire journey is really important.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. I think that's really important for people to know. So I did mention we wanted to talk more specifically about holiday and this shipping crisis, or Shipageddon, as it's been termed by the Jason and Scott show. And we did ask, it looks like a lot of folks that are listening in are thinking about and having some communication on their checkout to manage expectations related to potential shipping delays, or to address, things related to the curbside pickup or buy online pickup in the store. But I'd be interested to hear, what role do you think that checkout plays in some of these issues. And Jason, you touched on a little bit, but maybe you could expand a little bit. And I'd be interested if you've noticed anything from some of the clients that you're working with, any unique approaches to this that would be helpful for everyone listening in.
Yeah, sure. I think many retailers could do a lot to improve their checkout, especially during these challenging times. I think they could look at re-looking at the current workflow, which may be optimized for giving users the best experience in normal times, but not for these extreme situations where there are shipping challenges and product availability is low. So, for example, the site could let customers know if the retailer is actually able to fulfill the order before they put any substantial work in adding items to their basket, which means asking the customer for their constraints up front, such as delivery area, desired time for delivery, and allowing them to see and reserve available delivery and pickup windows as well. That'd be really good. One thing I mentioned before was to ask for their delivery address quite early on in the checkout process, which would allow the site to calculate delivery times and provide the customer with an estimated delivery date. There are many issues that can sort of affect deliveries. Having a good, correct, verified address really helps remove a large percentage of those of missed deliveries, like I mentioned in the presentation, I think.
And I mean, Universal, you don't have stores, so I'm guessing this isn't as much of an issue. But let me know if there's anything you wanted to add here, Rashaan. But Wu, I wanted to ask you, what have you been thinking about in terms of this issue and what you can communicate to set expectations for customers related to Shipageddon?
Yeah, for sure. So again, on that similar note of just consistent communication, you can run scripts to the checkout page, and this is particularly in Shopify. So that way, the information, any kind of product-related information that may have been visible on a PDP should trail all the way to the checkout, and that way that information is also saved and provided again in the order confirmation. So communication is just key in building that trust and also developing retention. So having that communication of this item will ship on next date, or if you choose ground, you can anticipate your item to be delivered by this date. Having that notification is really key. And then obviously during the holidays, just having more upfront information will be helpful. That way you're not dealing with, upset customers.
Great, thank you. So we have sorry, go ahead, Rashaan.
I was going to just chime in more as a consumer on this topic because I buy a lot online in the name of research. And the thing that I have noticed is, I think for me personally, I'm willing to give a lot more leeway to retailers right now on deliveries just because of all that's happening. But when it goes wrong, what I really appreciate is a recovery. So some sort of I had a shipping delay with one retailer, and they sent me a coupon afterwards, which I wasn't expecting, but it was a nice surprise and delight. So I think in addition to the consistency, just having a way to recover your shoppers that are having a bad experience and make it right with them.
So I'm going to go back to another one of our questions got upvoted from one of our regular webinar listeners, Janet Rush. And she caught on to the question in the polling about single page of checkout. And Jason, this is for you. I mean, what have you experienced that, how much does a single page checkout on mobile improve conversion or reduce cart abandonment?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I can follow this on with the team with any stats we have. But really, there's so many things that can impact conversion rates, and address verification is just one of those components. So rather than focus on CRV, we focus on time spent in checkout and the reduction in keystrokes we're able to deliver with our type header solution.
All right. Great. And if you have any more information, let us know, and we'll get that passed along. Sure. Looking ahead to, beyond just the holiday season into 2021, it seems like there's all kinds of new payments. We have the iPhone 12 that just came out, Apple Pay, Google Pay. There's a lot of companies like Klarna that are doing, buy now, pay later. All of these have an impact on checkout. I mean, Jason, it'd be interesting to hear your, point of view on some of these things that retailers should begin planning for, and how do they, what do you recommend for retailers to stay current on this and make sure they're not getting too far ahead, but they're prepared when changes are happening?
Yeah, sure. I think like omni-channel shopping will be the new norm, whether that's between different devices or different channels. So as you mentioned before, like various purchasing options such as like buy online, pick up in store, buy in store, choose home delivery, buy online, get doorstep delivery, those kind of things. Also, the pandemic has really accelerated the adoption of click and collect, increasing like 208% year on year. According to research, 45% of customers plan to keep avoiding shopping centers and malls, which is not a surprise really. I've also heard that because of this pandemic, all of us will essentially be 30% poorer on average. So I assume consumers will have to adopt things like finance schemes, like the Klarna buy now, pay later. Another trend I sort of read up on about was that businesses are starting to accept crypto payments as well, to entice customers to choose their brand, especially like Bitcoin, which has like quite a few benefits for online shop owners, such as like low transaction fees and no reverse transactions. Like a good example is Overstock, who's recently partnered with Coinbase, a Bitcoin platform, to allow customers to use Bitcoin on their site. So yeah, they're the main ones, I think.
And Wu and Rashaan, from a operator's point of view, Jason just brought up, Bitcoin, and there's all these other, there's these payment schemes and so on. I mean, how do you navigate through all of that and decide what you're going to adopt, what you want to put on your checkout, and how it's going to impact the rest of checkout? Like, how much time should retailers be spending thinking about this? Wu, do you want to start?
Sure. So in terms of, obviously the different providers of all the payments, it's, for us, especially as a D2C brand, it's really important for us to understand the device that they're using. So obviously iPhones offer Apple Pay if you're shopping through, Safari on your phone, and then Google Pay for more of the Google phone. So it's really important for us to take a look at our traffic and the users and who is coming to our site. So that really largely drives kind of the payment methods that we have on our website. And then, of course, the key thing that we like to mention is Afterpay. Having the ability to try on a pair of sneakers for 14 days, free for 14 days, and we offer free shipping in return. So having those types of messaging on the checkout has been fruitful for us.
Yeah, and then for us at Universal, for some time we've had a payment option called FlexPay for our higher spend annual pass purchases. So that's been certainly helpful for the consumer. But as we move into this contactless world, just a funny anecdote here is, as we were first communicating Apple Pay, I know when I first started using it, I had some hiccups just trying to get it set up through my credit card company. And what I was telling people internally is we should probably have some, instructions or something around using these payment types for the first time. And before we could even get that rolled out, it had so much widespread adoption that it didn't seem necessary. So, I think these new payment types are sort of gaining traction so quickly that consumers are really ahead of it. It's just a matter of us being able to have that functionality ready for them.
All right, well, we have time for one more audience question. This came in from Brooke Cow. thoughts on wish list save for later features and impact on conversion. So anyone on the panel want to take a crack at that?
Yeah, I can speak to it as a shopper myself that I use these features frequently, and I take really Target to me is the model for this, because they make it so easy within the app to save items, and in particular when they have new product collaborations with other designers or home decor. They have so many different collaborations now. They'll launch them at midnight, but before they do, they will show the preview of all of the products available and allow you to save those to a wish list so that you can quickly check out before they sell out. I have used that functionality so often. I'm embarrassed to admit how often I use it, but it is super helpful and makes things quick and easy for the consumer, especially for those items that are likely to go out of stock.
All right, well, we are just about out of time here, but I wanted to wrap up with some words of inspiration as we head into this crazy busy holiday season that, pardon the cliche, will be unprecedented. And, you're all veterans. You've gone through a number of these. Any single piece of advice, I don't know, meditate, drink a lot, communicate better with your team. What are your thoughts? So, Wu, I believe you're back with us. So, do you want to share your thoughts on final piece of advice for everyone to help them manage through this crazy time we're all about to deal with?
Yes, I want to say, this year has been really interesting for many of us in many different ways, and especially as a retailer, there's been challenges to be as proactive as we ideally want to be. So I think, especially with Q4 going to be of this year, going to have a lot of activity, making sure that you're planned in terms of your messaging, segmentation of your own channels, having that calendar built out at least until end of year will help you organize, and that's truly how I stay structured in terms of just kind of the tasks and making sure that we have thoughtful approaches to such a busy holiday season this year.
All right, that sounds like a very pragmatic, mature way to approach it. Thank you, Rashaan.
Yeah, I would sort of echo the sentiment. It's been a really rough time, and we've all had challenges in our business, even for those of us who have businesses that are experiencing sales increases. During this time, it's a challenge to kind of keep up with demand. For those of us like our local theme park being closed, it's a challenge dealing with lack of demand. But the exciting part about this time is that it's really a time to reinvent our businesses. So I would encourage everyone to challenge the status quo, to do more brainstorming, to really be thinking outside of the box right now, because now is a time to do that. And I really think as difficult as this time has been, it's also a magical time, and is one that's going to generate a lot of ingenuity.
Well, there was a great column by Thomas Friedman in the Times today on creative destruction that I would recommend, very much related to what you were just saying. And Jason, final word from you and final advice.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I think user needs are really changing quite quickly at the moment. We must really keep up. Companies that are the most flexible and resilient will be the ones that survive. And that starts with good research, really. That can be in the form of surveys or interviews, just to better understand how new customer concerns and preferences, really. User research is a form of risk reduction. The greater the risk, for example, because of rapid change, the more you need to reduce that risk. So making sure you have a really good research strategy in place would be the one piece of advice I recommend right now. I believe it's time for more research, not less.
All right, great advice. So Wu, Rashaan, Jason, thank you again so much for sharing your insights and your experience with everyone in our audience. Greatly appreciate it. Best of luck to all of you during the holiday season. Again, we will be back next week for our next webinar on October 28th, looking at the psychology shoppers as we get ready for Black Friday. So we hope to see you in a week, and have a great rest of your Wednesday. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.